Welcome back. See, still here. The president's role in military conflicts has been growing at the expense of Congress. And not just this president. Back in 2003, George W. Bush secured authorization from Congress to invade Iraq, which limited the conflict's scope. But in 2011, his successor, President Barack Obama, authorized strikes in Libya without congressional approval. And now President Trump has inherited an engorged and largely unaccountable presidency with regards to war power. Now, in response, members of Congress from both parties are asking Paul Ryan to require a formal vote authorizing the president to deploy troops to fight ISIS and to legally determine the bounds of the conflict. Is the genie already out of the bottle and armed? Well, let me ask Dr. Ron Paul, host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, former presidential candidate. Dr. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much. Is this the most egregious area where there's too much power concentrated in the presidency?
Yes, and it's been that way for a long time. You know, even back with the Korean War and the Vietnam War and all these wars were all fought without constitutional approval, without a declaration. So it is. War is a vicious thing to deal with because of the killing that goes on, as well as the financial burden, and yet it's perpetual. Even after Vietnam War, they passed this War Powers Resolution, which was supposed to restrain it, and after they passed it, actually allowed the president to do more.
Now, isn't that interesting that they're operating from such a defensive posture when it comes to defense? But you're absolutely right, and this authorization of use of military force that dates back to the early aughts, of course, when you were in Congress, was way too broad. Now, is it Congress's fault that there's so much power concentrated in the executive branch?
Yeah, I think so, because the president, the executive branch, will always grab it. That's the nature of government. But the way the founders designed our system, the brake should always be placed in the hands of the legislature, because they have the power of the purse. Even if you didn't deal with his direct and explicit authority, you still have the power of the purse. Sometimes they complain, but it is inferred that if you give them the money, you're really approving it. So, but it's the Congress's fault. Right now, you know, it's the Congress it's fighting to make sure that Trump isn't restrained in any manner whatsoever. And I love it, the fact that these guys are trying to rein this in and have a new debate on this. But unfortunately, I don't think you know, they're going to be able to stop it. I think it's well in place, put in place. Republicans and Democrats seem to have the same determination to fight overseas and not interfere. And they claim this vague constitutional authority because he's the commander-in-chief. He's the commander-in-chief of the military after a war has been declared. He isn't the commander-in-chief in deciding when we go to war.
And that's actually a really important point that constitutionalists have to constantly remind themselves of. You know, even if they are neocons or hawks, it is up to Congress to declare war, and that's why you're seeing bipartisan support in these two bills, particularly, though, from Jim McGovern. He's a Democrat from Massachusetts, and he's got people on board like Justin Amash, whom I talked to last week. And, you know, these are people who want to limit the size and scope of government and, you know, hold this president and any other president accountable. But this should not be a partisan issue. You should not allow the president to act on your blank check just because he is in your party.
Yeah, and I like to deal with the issue because I thought it was so important. I was very much involved and thought we were too much involved in these wars. And I thought it was a great thing for libertarians to think about as a strategy, because this brings an honest progressive together with a libertarian conservative constitutionalist. That's why you see Walter Jones there. That's why you saw Jimmy Duncan voted against these wars. And then you see Jim McGovern. And these people, you know, are progressives, and because they are working on principles.
Yeah.
But right now, we have some real hawkish Republicans that are determined that, you know, we're destined. We have to have an enemy out there, you know, otherwise, why are we building all these weapons if we don't have an enemy?
A bloated state is the greatest enemy, I think you could argue. Dr. Paul, we've run out of time, but thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.